David here with Figboot on Pens, back again with another fountain pen review. And today I have something very unique, something that I had never seen before, which is a vintage fountain pen from North Korea called the Chollima 210. What I'm going to do today is go over the parts and features of this vintage offering. I'll talk about what I care for and what I don't care for about it. I'll show some measurements, size comparisons, and provide a writing sample. A big thanks go out to a viewer by the name of Caleb who provided me this pen on loan for review. Now, I'm not going to discuss geopolitical aspects of North Korea in this review, but I do find it interesting how isolated the country has become to the majority of the world, and wonder if that will ever change in my lifetime. So, in order to get a look at this pen that will probably get me banned from r/Ponyung on Reddit, please join me over here at camera 2. The pen arrives in this kind of folded paper box. On the front here, it has the name of the brand, and then it actually says the name of the brand and fountain pen in Korean. While information about North Korea can be hard to come by at times, if my research has served me correctly, Chollima is a state-sponsored brand name that makes a wide range of products, everything from tractors and trailers to fountain pens. The name Chollima refers to the Chollima movement of the late 1950s, which was a state-sponsored campaign for economic development in the country. The symbol for this movement was this horse right here called a Chollima, which was a mythical winged horse from Chinese literature. It's said to be too swift and elegant to be mounted by any mortal man, and is named after its ability to travel 1,000 Chinese miles in a single day. What is a Chinese mile, you say? Well, that's a unit of measurement which has varied over time, but is approximately a third of what we know today as a mile, about 500 meters. That's the danger of doing research for these reviews, is really jumping down unintended rabbit holes. I started by researching the name of the company that made this pen, and 30 minutes later I'm learning about why the Chinese mile changed between the Han and Tang dynasties. I mean, come on, Tang dynasty, get your act together. But let's go ahead and take a look at this pen. The top comes off, and then the pen is nestled inside. And here we have the Chollima 210. My best guess is this pen was manufactured in the mid to late 1970s. They have other models which were copies of the Parker 51, so in essence these are a bit of a knockoff pen of previous designs. This has a look of some of the pilot pens from that era. So let's go ahead and take a look at the parts and features here of this pen. Well, let's see. Here at the end of the cap, this is a vintage pen, so there is a little bit of wear and tear here. But there is a little gold piece at the end, and then the cap angles up until it straightens out here right at the end. There is a clip that has a little bit of tarnish on it, or a little bit of something. I haven't tried cleaning it, but the clip is rather springy, and so it does fit in materials of varying thicknesses. And then there's a little pseudo band, which is just a different application of the material. And then there's a very small step down to the barrel, which is a black resin, which tapers down at a fairly even angle until you get here to the end where it tapers down a little greater. And then on the end, just like at the top of the cap, we have a little gold colored piece. The cap is a snap cap and just pulls right off. And underneath, we have an interesting nib. First of all, this is a 12 karat gold nib. You can see up close here, there is some Korean writing on the nib. That is the name of the company. And then you can see there, it does say that it is 12 karat gold. And then here's a look at the plastic feed. It's interesting how you can see here how it is inlaid a little bit. So it almost looks a little more hooded on the bottom, and then a little more area here that is exposed up top. I do like this little arrow that is here on the top that's inlaid into the resin. And it's done so well, it's fairly smooth. You really can't feel that. I do like the length of this section. It is a little bit thin for my tastes, but it does accommodate a wide variety of grip styles, so that if you should grip the pen a little bit further back, then the transition here doesn't get into the way at all. And that I do find this to be comfortable in the hand and fairly well balanced. It's plenty long enough to use unposted. The cap does post, and it does post rather deeply. And I do like the fact that this transition, at least for me, even though it is right there on the crook of my hand, it is very smooth and rounded, and so it's not going to bother you at all. So if you like to post this pen, this is one to do that you can do that for. And the cap is so light, it doesn't backweight the pen or throw off the balance or anything like that. This is a cartridge converter pen. I didn't try it with cartridges, but it does come with a bulb converter. And I wanted to ink this up here on camera, but I thought this was interesting. First of all, you have some nice ink windows, and you have the original bulb. And then when you unscrew this, you can see the inner workings of this. There is this little pipe that comes up, and then what happens is the bulb here sucks ink through the pipe, and then it kind of fills up the chamber in there. And the band came off, and let's go ahead and put that band back on. And so I thought it would be interesting to go ahead and try to ink this up on camera, because I wasn't quite sure if this was going to work correctly or not, and I didn't want to do it and then clean it out and things like that. So let's go ahead and see if this works. And if not, then we'll just bulb syringe this so that we can go ahead and get a writing sample. So what ink should I use in this North Korean pen? I decided to use something from South Korea, which is from Dominant Industry. I just like this little pouch that the ink comes in. I usually don't keep the ink in its packaging, but for some reason I like keeping this ink in this little pouch. And inside we have the Milky Way Blue, which is an ink that I really care for. And there is a bit of kind of blue or silver-ish shimmer that is in here. But let's go ahead and open this up and see what we can do in regard to this bulb syringe. I see it going up the small tube. There we go. We're actually getting some ink, and that's actually filling up nicely. Here, we won't overfill it, but it filled up nicely, which is nice to see. I tell you what, real quick, before we get to the writing sample, let's go ahead and show some measurements and some size comparisons, and then we'll have that writing sample. Before we get to the measurements, I had mentioned that this pen was loaned to me by a viewer by the name of Caleb, and Caleb also does some art, and that he sent along this picture of myself. So that's something I thought was nice, and I appreciate it. So thank you, Caleb. In regard to size comparisons, this is what it looks like with one of the newer Parker 51s. And then here it is with another Parker, and this one is the Vacuumatic. And then here it is with a TWSBI Diamond 580, and this is the Iris version. In regard to some other pens, here it is with an Asvine V126, and then here it is with a Lamy All-Star. And then finally, here it is with a pen I really feel is underrated, which is the Faber-Castell Loom. In regard to uncap comparisons, here it is with that Parker 51. Let's scoot these over just a tiny bit. And then the Vacuumatic, and then finally that Faber-Castell Loom. Okay, here we go with the writing sample for the Chollima 210. I'm going to guess that this is a fine nib. And the ink I'm using, as I showed you before, was Dominant Industries Milky Way Blue. I already showed you the bottle, but this is what the ink looks like. It's a nice vibrant blue with some blue sheening in there. Somewhat similar to something like Diamine's Bloody Brexit, which has a little bit more on the sheen, as well as KWZ's Sheen Machine. And then you might see those two little spots there. That's what happens when you keep your ink swatches next to a window that a dog might come up to and bark at when the mail's being delivered. And then the dog proceeds to drool all over your ink supplies. So don't let that happen. And here we go with the rest of the writing sample. This is an interesting nib. I can't describe this writing experience as pleasant. It's actually hard to control. It is extremely firm. I've never felt a gold nib like this. This does say 12 karat on here. Maybe I'm not sure if it's 12 karat gold or 12 karat what. I'm assuming gold. But it just is extremely firm. It is very scratchy. And it's almost like when you're writing, the pen wants to take control and take the writing where you don't want it. You're not going to get much flex out of here. For a gold nib, you would expect a little bit more flex. But in regard to ink flow, it's decent. The ink is coming out. In regard to reverse writing, the nib is actually kind of tapered down a little bit. I don't know if that's just over time that happened or if that is intentional, but backwards writing almost acts like a Fude nib. But in regard to just standard writing, it's just a unique experience because, like I said, I can't describe it as pleasant, but it does write. Let's do some fast writing. But I would have never had guessed this was a gold nib, and it doesn't feel like any gold nib that I have ever used. It's significantly more firm, and then, as you can see, it's been ripping up the paper now, and now there's a little bit of paper in the tines there. But it does write, and for being a vintage pen, it does write well in regard to ink flow, but I'm just not quite sure where the pen is going when the tip of the nib hits the paper. In regard to price, you can find a number of these pens as well as similar models on eBay, and the price ranges kind of around $100 to $125 or so. Big thanks go out to Caleb for providing this pen on loan for review. You know, generally vintage pens aren't my thing, but I've enjoyed taking a look at this somewhat rare pen and hope you've enjoyed taking a look at it as well. Okay, until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.